What up, world? It's yours truly, Mr. Mazumpaka, with another episode of Stunt Corner Podcast. I'm here with a very special guest, Paul the Mauler Lazenby, professional wrestler, author, heavyweight Muay Thai and MMA champion, well-traveled, well-read, and just all around amazing and an incredible individual. Let's say hello to Paul the Mauler Lazenby.
How you doing? Thank you for the intro,
Yeah, man.
You just got hired as my new publicist.
Yeah! Now, Paul, so it's 1988. You were just about to register as an infantry soldier.
Yeah.
Who were you? Who was Paul in 1988?
I was just coming out of an adolescence as a fat nerd. I was like the fat bullied kid all through grade school. When I was 17, lost the weight, started coming out of my shell a little bit, and then at 19, went into the Army in 1988. So really went in as a way of trying to figure out what the hell, like who the hell I was. Like just still trying to figure out who the hell I was. So I figured, go put my feet to the fire and see what this Army thing's all about, and maybe that's what I want to do with the rest of my life.
So where did the inspiration or the want to become a professional wrestler?
Oh, that was...
Was that something you just always had? Even
Oh,
as a
absolutely.
kid?
I loved it as a kid, man. I was never allowed to watch pro wrestling as a kid, so I'd always
Yeah.
sneak out to my friend's house and watch it.
Cool.
And,
Where'd you grow up, by the way?
Kitchener, Ontario.
Okay,
It's just south of Toronto. Don't ever go there. It's
Okay, copy.
It's not... It's a nice enough city. It's just lame.
Copy.
Yeah, I just was always loved pro wrestling. Always fascinated with it. So that was, I had a brief stint in the Army, came out, and I was 23 years old. I'll still remember this moment for the rest of my life. And I was working in a department store called Consumers Distributing, assistant manager of the clip-on tie, hating my life.
Yeah.
And I'm flipping through a magazine, because we had magazines back then, there was no online, Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine, and I saw this ad for Hart Brothers Pro Wrestling School in Calgary. And like, back then, this is 1991,
Yeah.
pro wrestling was still very secretive. Like, a lot of people don't remember, up until the end of what they call the kayfabe era, right up until the early 90s, pro wrestling was a closed shop, and they were still making like these are real fights, and they were like, it's like the mafia, man. We got our secrets, and insiders are insiders, and outsiders are outsiders.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have known how to get in, and I'm like, what? They have schools for this? Are you freaking kidding me? Like, ugh.
Yeah.
So I was broke as a joke, but a couple of very good friends named Carlos Leal and Crystal Vines that lent me the money, and Carlos actually drove me 2,000 miles to Calgary. Just took his vacation time. I'm gonna do a road trip, and took me to Calgary, and they got me set up at Hart Brothers.
And how long were you in the Hart Brothers for?
I think it was a 10-week course, and my trainers were Lance Storm and Chris Jericho, who were just finishing out their own rookie years. So I was like, they didn't have a year in the business and they're teaching already, but they were actually good at it. So
Lance Storm and Chris Jericho were your like mentors. They were the guys.
They were the guys that got me off the ground. But
okay.
I would say that if I had to assign that mentor status to somebody, it would be a guy who I met at Hart Brothers, Dr. Luther.
Dr. Luther.
He goes by just Luther now in AEW. He's like 30 years in, and he's still wrestling at the highest level.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that he would just come in and kind of help to teach the students just for fun.
Yeah.
But he was, I think, senior to everybody. He'd been doing it longer. He was wrestling in the old Stampede Wrestling in Calgary, and he was just about to go to Japan and immediately become a huge star over there.
Yeah.
And we really bonded. His real name's Lenny Olson, and we bonded right away. And he was the guy that kind of guided me through my whole career. I had the best match of my career against him in South Africa, and he's if I was going to call somebody a mentor in wrestling, it would be Luther.
Luther. Awesome, man. And so in 1991, you also held the deadlift Canadian world record.
Canadian record, yeah.
Canadian record for
I
deadlifts.
competed in the Junior National Powerlifting Championship, so at the time, I did a 600-pound deadlift, and at the time, that was a Canadian record. I think it's been smashed since then. But
How old were you at this time?
I was 23.
23.
Yeah.
Holy shit, powerhouse, eh? Yeah. I don't know how many 23-year-olds are deadlifting 600 pounds.
Actually, a lot right now.
Oh, really?
Powerlifting's gotten crazy, man.
Oh, shit.
There are so many strong people out there now. Like a 600-pound deadlift, people don't even bat an eye at it anymore. Percentage-wise, there's not too many people in the world that can do that, but then you look within that little niche world of powerlifting, and there's a lot of people who can do it.
Oh, crazy, man. So what was your transition from professional wrestling? How long were you a professional wrestler before you decided to move into professional fighting and kickboxing?
Well, that was... I never intended on being a real fighter. The full scope of my... I did a little bit of martial arts training in the mid-90s, just in this really bastardized form of Japanese jiu-jitsu, but it was pure street fighting. It wasn't.
Were you living in Japan at the time?
No, I was living in Kitchener.
You were in Kitchener still.
But it was just, I was a bouncer, and I knew the guys that were teaching this, and they were only teaching selected students, but it was a real dirty style, and it was very effective. So I learned from those guys, Dave Lawton and Pseudo Kraya, and that was pretty much all I knew with regards to martial arts and stuff. But as far as making the transition from wrestling to fighting, it was because I wanted to see Japan.
Oh, okay.
I had a goal when I got into pro wrestling is I'm going to try to make it to WWE or an equivalent level organization like New Japan or WCW, and I got to go to Japan. I got to wrestle in Japan at least once. And I had a couple times where it almost happened and it fell through.
Yeah.
And all my friends were going all the time. I mean, like I said, like my friends are Lance and Chris Jericho and Luther and all these guys. They're going every month, and I'm like, I'm so jealous. So what happened was I was wrestling. I'd been wrestling for a few years. I was wrestling as a character called Death Wolf in Detroit. And I saw a lady who I knew I didn't know her, but I recognized her.
Yeah.
And then I realized I had seen her on a UFC videotape, because again, we watched VHS tapes back then. And she was actually hanging off the side of the cage during the Hoist Gracie Dan Severn title fight. Her name was Phyllis Lee, and she's a manager of a lot of fighters and a lot of pro wrestlers.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh, okay, well, she'd be a good contact to make. So I went to talk to her, and she said, well, I'm not booking pro wrestlers for work right now, but have you heard of a group called Pancrase, which at the time was the #1 MMA group in the world, even above UFC?
Okay.
That's where Ken Shamrock and Boss Rutan and Frank Shamrock, these guys all came out of Pancrase.
Okay.
Before their UFC success.
Yeah.
And that's where the elite fighters of the world were. And I just happened to be one of maybe 50 guys in Canada, maybe not even that many, who knew Pancrase. I was a huge fan. I used to get the Japanese bootlegs off of Luther and those guys, and I'd watch them to death. I loved it. And it was a legitimate. They used pro wrestling rules, like you could grab the ropes and get out of a hold and stuff like that, but it was real fights.
Yeah.
And I was a huge fan. So I start rattling off all the names, and she's going, oh, I'm not used to Western guys knowing this stuff. So she gave me an application form. And I thought, all right, I have no idea what I'm doing. I didn't even wrestle in high school. I got no competitive fights.
So you had no wrestling background in high school?
No, nothing. My fights were street fights. That's the only fights I'd ever had.
Wow.
So yeah, no boxing, no nothing, no. Yeah. And so I'm like, well, I got to shoot my shot because it's Japan. Yeah. I got to try to get to Japan, but they've never taken a Canadian in this organization before, so they're gonna vet my stuff and they're gonna laugh at me and leave. So I filled it up with lies. There's all these BS martial arts credentials I didn't have.
Yeah.
Sent it in and forgot about it. So a month goes by, I've completely forgotten, and then Phyllis calls me up and she said Moshi Boshi, and I recognize that because Luther told me that's how they answer the phone in Japan.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you saying what I think you're saying? She goes, yeah, next month you're going to Tokyo. You're going to fight the #3 ranked fighter in the world. Okay, I guess I'm going to see Japan. I might die in the process, though. Oh my God. So yeah, my first fight of any type was in front of 10,000 people in Tokyo.
So you submit a form, forget about the form, and then next thing you hear, you're going to Japan to perform in front of how many?
10,000 people.
10,000 people in your first ever Pancrase match.
First ever combat sport match.
Whatever, in front of 10,000 people.
Yeah. And the guy I was fighting was my favorite guy. His name's Yanagazawa. We call him Aji, but he was about my size. Like, he's huge.
So you're fighting an idol of yours.
Yeah, it's like, this is my favorite Pancrase fighter. They sick him on me for my first fight.
Holy shit.
And yeah, I was breaking it. I was so terrified. I had no idea what to expect. And MMA at the time was it was considered very, very dangerous because it was still forming. So like if you go to Brazil, the rules would be totally different from if you go to Holland, from if you go to America, if you go to Japan. Everybody seemed to have their own rules, and the sport was in flux.
Yeah.
And MMA fighters were considered to be these dangerous savages, and then Pancrase were the best of the best. These were like the technicians that could rip your tendons and break your bones.
Yeah.
So I'm starting at the very top. This would be like if I went into UFC and I'm fighting Stipe Miocic in my first fight.
Like off the bat.
Yeah. So it was terrifying. The whole week that I was there before the fight, I'm trying to appreciate the Japanese fight, but it's like my execution date's coming. And no mouth guard, no groin cup, no corner man. I had no idea what I was doing. And I still wasn't quite sure if they were real fights. Because in Japan, they have organizations where it looks like a real fight, but it wasn't. It was predetermined. So the whole week I'm waiting. Maybe somebody's going to come up.
So you're not sure exactly where it falls in the line of...
Yeah. Like, real versus fake. And there were groups like, there's one called UWFI and one called Rings, and their fights looked like real fights.
Yeah.
They didn't look like pro wrestling matches, but they were predetermined outcomes.
Is that called, sorry, in that term also, are those shooters?
Yeah, shoot fighting.
Shoot fighting,
A lot of people call it shoot fighting.
So that's when they're two professionals are just going without it being really fake. It's more...
Well, that word has a few different definitions.
Okay.
Like basically a shooter is somebody who's a good submission wrestler.
Oh, okay.
But if you say shoot fighting, generally what that means is a style where the guys use open hand strikes instead of punches to the head. A lot of technical grappling, kicks, knees allowed, stuff like that. And they're very good at crippling holds and submission holds.
Okay, copy.
So Pancrase was technically a shoot fighting organization, but it was legit. Like they did real fights.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure because you didn't have the internet. You know, there were a lot of rumors about Pancrase, but nobody knew for sure. Are they real? Are they fake?
Yeah.
I remember specifically the moment I knew it was real. I was walking into the ring. I stepped between the ropes and I looked down, and it was just like Jackson Pollock had gone berserk in there with a can of red paint.
Blood everywhere.
Blood splatters everywhere. I'm like, okay, this is a real fight.
So you didn't know if it was real or not until you stepped on the canvas and just saw blood everywhere, and you're like Justin Pollock, just fucking.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I guess I'm fighting for real.
Wow.
Yeah.
So A, you send an application. B, you get told you're going to Japan to fight in front of 10,000 people with top 3 ranked. And then you find out stepping into the ring that it's real.
Yeah.
And how old were you when all of this was happening?
I was 28. I mean, I started a lot of stuff really late, and I
So 28 is that late for wrestling?
That's extremely late.
Oh, okay.
To have your first fight, especially professional fights, way late. I mean,
so generally are they falling in the 21? Like,
oh, dude, there's like, I mean, if you're talking about your first ever combat sport fight, I mean, you look at Vasily Lomachenko. I think he had 150 fights before he turned pro.
Yeah, I guess 28 is kind of a late start.
Oh, way late, man. Yeah. It's like that's ancient. That's almost unheard of.
Holy shit.
So yeah, and so that was also because of the rules at the time. It was 1 15-minute round with no breaks. So I thought I was in shape until that happened. And the thing is, in Japan, the crowds are dead silent unless something big happens because they're watching, they're paying attention.
Okay.
So there's this dead silent crowd. I can hear the shutters on the photographers' cameras at ringside. That's how quiet it is. But every 5 minutes, the timekeeper will announce 5 minutes past, 10 minutes past.
Yeah.
So when he announced 5 minutes past, I felt like going, F you, dude. That was at least 15.
Yeah.
I'm dying in here. Oh, dude. I thought it was in shape.
They could just hear you under your breath.
Oh, yeah, you're gonna. Yeah, but we went, like, I lasted 13 minutes, I was, what saved me in that organization were 2 things. I had been a competitive strongman and powerlifter, and so I was stronger than him.
Okay.
And I was super aggressive because my attitude is if I'm going to die, well, I may as well throw myself at whatever it is, a threat, and go down swinging. So I was doing that, and what I didn't realize was a lot of guys, even guys who had fought in UFC, would go to Pancrase, and like that's the big time of the day, and they would freeze up. And they'd backpedal, and they'd be... So the Japanese, who have a great attitude, fans and fighting organizations, where it's not so much about whether you win or lose, it's how you win or lose.
Okay.
If you go in there and fight your ass off, they don't care if you win or lose.
Yeah.
And so they saw this, decent-looking Canadian kid, and I'm exotic because I'm a Canadian. They've never seen one in the group before, and I'm fighting like hell, even though I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I got a really good reception afterward, and I lasted 13 minutes. So I still remember when it was over, Aji, we're both still out of breath. He just looked over. He goes, "You're coming back."
Sweet.
And I thought he was just being nice to me, but sure enough, a week after I got home, Phyllis calls me up and she goes, "You've been invited to go back and live at their dojo in Yokohama for 6 weeks and train with them." Now, this is at a time where people were literally being arrested for fighting in MMA in Canada. And I'm unemployed living in my buddy's auto shop, so I got nothing going on anyway.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, absolutely, I will do it. She goes, "Oh yeah, and 4 days after you get there, you're fighting the world champion." I'm like, okay, I'm going to get myself killed here. So yeah, 4 days after I got there, I fought the world champion.
So the one opportunity you got, you absolutely took advantage in every aspect of the way of that opportunity.
I say yes to, if it's cool, I'm going to say yes to it.
Yeah.
It might kill me, but I'll die doing something cool then.
Yeah. And so for anyone out there, like we've heard in these last 3 episodes, is when these opportunities come, not everyone has, those opportunities don't come with a manual to tell you how to take advantage of it. Mm-hmm. So it's upon yourself to get creative and know how to take advantage of that and to be able to take those risks.
And don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah, don't be afraid to fail.
I have failed so many freaking times, seriously.
Yeah,
fall on your face.
And I think that's one of the things I've noticed with a lot of the athletes I talk to is that they're not afraid to fail. And a lot of people are held back by fear, right? Like a lot of people don't take, like I don't know how many people would jump onto a plane to go fight in front of 10,000 people in a combat sport they've never taken Like, no, I don't know how many people do that. Like,
Well, I remember having dinner with my sister the night before I left, and at one point in the dinner, I just looked across the table and went, "What the hell am I doing?"
yeah, like.
But I never thought of going back home. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm obviously going to do it because it's cool, but what the hell am I doing? I'm going to die over there.
But I think that I wish more people took risks like that, because it's a terrifying place not to have a guarantee, and a lot of people stay in that in these little bubbles because it's not a guarantee, so they don't want. But like one of the biggest reasons I wanted to do these podcasts was to be able to talk to people like you and just tell people, yes, fail, take those risks, like take advantage of these opportunities that come your way. And if they don't come with a guide, write the fucking guide to these opportunities, because there's not there's no singular way to kind of approach it. And so now you're in Japan, you're in this dojo. Now you're not just competing, you're training with idols that you.
Yeah.
These are people you looked up to. These are proficient in this art form that they're in, and they're so highly respected. And now you're brought into this. And so when you're on stage and he tells you you're coming back, I know there's that very first moment where you're like, I don't believe this is happening, But once you got the day to kind of realize what happened, once you get to fly home, once it all kind of settles in, what did that feel like?
Oh, it was really cool because I got my Japanese experience. Like I always have an idea in my head that the only currency that actually accrues value right to your last breath is experience. There's going to be a day where you're 5 minutes from dying. And if it's dying of old age, or if you can see the end coming, it would be the worst feeling in the world to look back on that one shot. We might only get one life, and you look back, it's like, oh my God, I wasted all that time. I could have done all these cool things.
Preach.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like I never wanted to be that guy. And I've lost a lot of opportunities to make money and things like that. But dude, I look at crazy stuff I did touring South Africa as a pro wrestler, and fighting in Japan, so with me, it's experience. So when I got back, I was happy because I didn't die. I still got all my teeth. Yeah. And I got my Japanese experience. It's great. Okay, well done. On to the next. Yeah. And then I got the call about fighting Funaki, the world champion. Like, I guess I'm going back to Japan now.
Holy fuck. So how long were you in Japan for?
Well, all my fights there were in 97. So I was February 97. Flew back in March, stayed over until late April. Fought twice while I was there. Got my bicep torn in the fight with Funaki in the world champion fight.
Oh, complete tear?
It shut up. It's kind of really super short right now.
Yeah.
So so the whole time I was training there, I had a torn bicep. Thank God those guys are cool, and they would if they got a hold of my arm, they'd tap me out with something else.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And then I went back one more time. But again, talking about failing, I didn't win any of those fights, and they saw more in me than I saw in myself. That's why they made the investment of bringing me over. But mentally, I couldn't wrap my brain around the thought that I can beat some of these guys. That came later. So that's why it's been good to catch up with some of those guys in recent years and just say, look, dude, I'm really sorry you didn't get a return on your investment at the time, but just to let you know, I went back to Canada. I kept fighting to do something with that gift you guys gave me, and I won all these titles.
Yeah.
That was because of you, because I never would have been a fighter without you guys.
Yeah.
So it's cool to be able to say that to some of those dudes.
Cool, man.
I had dinner with Funaki, actually, just last January.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, he told me I almost knocked him out. I'm like, oh my God, that would have been the biggest upset in MMA history if I managed to pull that off.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing, though, to be able to catch up with an idol like that, man. Share all these years after. And so I find it kind of interesting with, I find a lot of parallels between, Peking House Opera. There's these proficient performers that had to go do this school, like when you're telling me you went to Hart's School Academy of Wrestling.
Yeah.
So you go and you go to these schools to learn to be a proficient performer and a martial artist. And so there's a lot of parallels I see between Peking House and professional wrestling. Is you're going to school to learn how to perform in front of people. You're going to learn how to use your body and language in front of thousands of people, and so. Do you find it an easier transition for professional wrestlers to get into the world of film, like Peking House Opera performers? Almost like wrestling with all the aspects of it that you have to learn, besides just the moves, is that you have to learn how to be a performer. The audience has to like you, or fucking not like you.
Yeah. Not like you in the right way.
In the right way. So like when you're going to once you're going into this career and you're stepping out of it, was it a very easy transition into film for you?
In some ways, yes. In other ways, no. Because but yeah, it is a huge advantage being a pro wrestler if you're moving into something like stunt work.
Yeah.
But you have to unlearn certain things.
Okay.
Like I remember, the guy who got me into stunts is James Bamford, Bam Bamford, and
shout out to Bamford.
Yeah, I owe my career to that guy, man.
Yeah.
But he, my first feature, I had a line that I was so green I didn't realize until I got there. I didn't even look at the sides, and so I got a line today. So I delivered it, and Bam Bam walks over and goes, "Okay, that wasn't just over the top. That was over the wall and into the next area code. Reel it back in." Because I was so exaggerating.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because in pro wrestling, everything's big and broad, and especially...
Because you're not mic'd, I guess, so you have to, like, speak... You have to... The people in the back of the fucking...
Well, yeah, to some people in the arena, if it's a big enough arena, you're that big.
Yeah.
So your movements have to be huge in order for them to see what's going on with you. And then, in all, of course, all the personalities are over the top, so you got to be larger than life. And so that was my base. I didn't have acting training. That came later, but that was my base. So I had to unlearn that. But it was really good that I did things kind of backwards. A lot of people go from being legitimate athletes, like Olympic style wrestlers or kickboxers or martial artists. They'll go into pro wrestling. They'll go into the artificial fighting out of the real fighting, and I did it in the reverse.
Yeah.
So I knew how to tailor my pro wrestling to look more like real fighting because I learned all that in Pancrase.
Yeah, okay.
But at the same time, my first real education in any kind of combat-related thing was in show fighting. So I was very comfortable and familiar with the idea of this has to look good even if it's not technically perfect.
Yeah.
Where a lot of fighters, sometimes they'll have a problem with that. It's like, well, I don't throw a straight right like that. Yeah. Well, you do now because the camera's over there and you need to throw it like that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I mean, because I find that you'd probably be like, because more than anything, I think a lot of the friends I grew up in, that was like, I don't know, there's probably many golden eras of wrestling, but it seems like that 90s, early 2000s was when like WrestleMania was just everywhere. Everyone is Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Undertaker. I like all these huge superstars. But what I do find interesting was it seems that when I look back in the history of wrestling, that it's almost like the invention of TV saved wrestling, because in the 30s wrestling wasn't as suited for, or was it the 20s, it wasn't as suited for radio. So because they weren't able to transmit like the radio, apparently in the 20s I feel like the wrestling kind of suffered, but apparently TV saved it, because now wrestling could go on TV and people could see the spectacle. And that's when they really started creating superstars.
I think they kind of they kind of established each other.
It
was like a match
TV
made
needed,
in heaven.
Yeah, TV needed the entertainment, and the entertainment needed the TV.
Yeah, it seemed to be a perfect fit for TV when TV was a brand new thing.
Yeah.
And something because a lot of people would go to live wrestling shows.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, I can see wrestling at home?
Yeah.
Like that was never possible before. So TV became a big thing partially because wrestling was so popular, and wrestling gained popularity because of increased exposure from TV.
Because apparently furniture stores, even when they were closed and they had TVs in front, would turn on wrestling just so people on the streets could gather around.
They do that in Japan too.
Yeah, and like that just speaks to how huge wrestling was and how important it was. And like so now these Gorgeous George and all these wrestlers start coming out, and these are like the new superstars of their wrestling. They're creating these characters, so that's why I find it interesting if it is easier for wrestlers to transition into stunts and film, because the history kind of comes from that, like athletic performer.
And you get used to, being on camera and performing for an audience if it's live. I've always found when I work with wrestlers that they tend to seek into it well. Like I said, there's stuff they got to unlearn about being on set. But just last summer, I did a WWE movie called The Main Event, and they brought up Otis and Eric Bugenhagen and Miz and a couple of other wrestlers, and they were generally Keith Lee. He's a good standout example because he'd never done a movie before, and he'd never done stunt work before, and he was a natural fit at both. And Otis, Otis is 5'9" all three ways, and he weighs about 340 and athletic. And I had to do a match with him. That guy, if he didn't know what he's doing, could hurt you really, really bad. And he didn't hurt me once. So, and at the same time,
340.
Yeah, he's a tank.
And athletic.
And he does the worm across the game.
What?
He can actually bend his body backward. It's crazy.
Jesus.
Great guy too, but he didn't get thrown off by the cameras. He didn't get thrown off by the audience because he was used to it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And so it didn't throw off his performance in the ring. So they do tend to adapt very well for the most part, especially at the WWE level.
Cool, man. And so for you now, what changes have you seen professional wrestling move towards? And what are some of the things you like about it and what are some of the things you don't? Because like any sport that evolves and changes, there's some new aspects that kind of have to be attached in order to let the sport progress. And some things they gotta let go. So what's some things you've noticed?
What I like is the athleticism got better, and what I hate is the athleticism got better. And I'll explain that. Is obviously like we've got a caliber of athletes now, like Cirque du Soleil level acrobatic performers who are professional wrestlers. We've never seen this standard of physical ability among so many wrestlers before. However, the emphasis in a lot of cases is on the moves, and it's all these. A lot of wrestlers aren't trying to make it look like a fight anymore. You see two people cooperating through a sequence of moves and trying to get their next big move in and rushing from one move to the next so the audience doesn't have time to process it. It's like a car crash.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas one of the fundamentals of wrestling that still works to this day is psychology. You're telling a story.
Yeah.
I got told that so many times by veterans when I first started don't just go in there and punch and kick a guy and slam him. You're telling a story.
Yeah.
Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? Who's stronger? Who's more agile? Who's this? Who's that? And you want to draw the audience in with psychology, and you parse out the big moves. We call them high spots. You parse them out. But in the case of today, we've got some workers like Kyle O'Reilly that really know how to do it right and do it right on a regular basis. You've got some other people that are very, very talented, but they're what we call spot monkeys, and they just want to get, again, a wrestling slang term is get your shit in. You get your shit in. You get all your moves in. But it's very similar to in our industry. If you've got a fight scene that's got 87 beats in it and they're all lightning fast, pop, 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 the audience doesn't have time to stop and take a breath and process what they've just seen. It's just a blur.
Yeah.
So what am I watching? Where's the entertainment value? And then I see another one like that, and these might be scenes that take a long time to shoot with very talented performers, but after a while your eyes just glaze over because like I've seen it all before.
Yeah.
So you got to be very careful about telling a story to the audience, and that's one thing where we've got people like Kyle and like the FTR tag team who are extremely good at that. And FTR in particular, another guy, MJF, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, they're both young guys who pull out of the 80s. Okay. Their favorite era is the 1980s. Yeah. Southern Wrestling, NWA. That's my favorite too. Okay. The old Ric Flair, Four Horsemen era. And when you watch that stuff, you see the stories being told. You see them drawing the audience in. They're not just throwing everything but the kitchen sink in the ring at the same time. And those methods will always work in pro wrestling. So I'm glad to see some people still doing it, and I'm hoping more of these super acrobatic, talented performers learn more about psychology and telling stories.
Do you think that's also due to? Do you think that's goes side by side with how? Because society, it seems to be with entertainment a lot of spot monkeys. Is that what it was?
Yeah, spot monkeys.
Yeah, so it seems like there's a lot of that across the board. Like when you go through Instagram, it's everything.
Yeah, short attention span.
Yeah, so do you feel like maybe it's in conjunction with how we
definitely
take in information? Yeah.
Well, a lot of current wrestlers are they're young people.
Yeah.
So they grew up with that short attention span where it's like Luther that I was talking about before. He's 52 now, I think, still performing at the top level in AEW, which is the main rival to WWE. But it's funny how divided some of the fans can be over Luther. Like some of the ones that they're just used to the car crash wrestling. Yeah. Like Luther's boring. And then other people are captivated by his matches because if you watch the whole match, he's telling a story. He's weaving a thread through the whole thing. Yeah. And yeah, it's not boom, 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 a high spot every 30 seconds. But when he does one, it means something. And also, he's playing off his opponent. So it's old guys in the business who are still wrestling today, I think, have that advantage where they can still draw the crowd in. And I'm hoping that some of the younger performers, more of the younger performers, want to learn that.
Okay. And one of my favorite stories I've ever heard, like I remember talking to you when we were both working on DC Legends. We were both doubling actors, and you were telling me a story of Stone Cold Steve Austin. So you were in a job and you were being told, hey, somebody else is going to be coming in, and you wanted to tell Stone Cold, hey, just in case you don't see me here, I just want to let you know.
Oh yeah, that was just I'll be vague about that because that's but Yeah,
it's more so that like the more the what I got from the story was how amazing he was, and so like we don't have to even talk about the story.
That was a situation where he absolutely I didn't really know him that well.
Yeah.
And that was a situation where he didn't need to have my back, and it was something where, you know, there might have been a situation where I didn't end up working on that show anymore.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to say, okay, well, if you don't see me tomorrow, it's not because I don't want to be here. It's just there's certain things in play.
Yeah.
And I might not be here tomorrow. And he said, anybody tells you you're not coming into work tomorrow, you tell them to talk to me. Yeah. And it died right there. And he didn't have to do that. You know, we're very close now. I didn't think we were that close at the time, but he took it upon himself to, you know, to say, no, you're my double. You know, you've been doubling me a couple movies now. I like working with you, so I'm going to stand up.
Well, that's fucking awesome though, because I think that's what made me happy. You know, when you're a fan of an athlete or an actor and you hear a story like that, it just reinforces why you liked that person. Because I don't know, out of like all the like 316 seemed like there wasn't any real acting there. Like he was just that's him.
He said before, he said basically Stone Cold Steve Austin is his personality with the volume turned up.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So it's like that. It's nice when you hear stories like you were telling me, and it's like, oh, like he didn't have to do that for you.
No.
But the fact that he just did just shows like how fucking gangster he is.
No, absolutely. He actually gave me this watch too, man.
Did he give you that watch?
I wasn't even a watch guy. I've had this for like 10 years. When he gave it to me, it's like, okay, they're gonna bury me in this watch now. That's the baddest ass thing. But yeah, they say don't meet your heroes. If you have a chance to meet Steve Austin, meet your heroes. Okay? Yeah, if you're polite with him, he's going to be more than polite with you.
Nice, man. And so you guys you've had this friendship going over for what was the first movie you worked on with him?
It was actually a movie called Damage in 2008, and I wasn't doubling him.
Oh, okay.
He was being doubled by a guy named Kevin Rushton, but I was his opponent in an underground bare knuckle fight.
Okay.
So the whole day he was working with another stunt performer who had some good skills, but he wasn't that experienced. So Steve would be lunging in. And Steve's very explosive. Like when he's swinging his fist, it's easy to get intimidated. But this guy was flinching away. And now Steve's a pro wrestler, and this is one thing I learned. I had to unlearn as a pro wrestler when I moved into film. You know from experience, sometimes you can throw a punch that misses by like that much.
Yeah.
Depending on where the camera is.
Yeah.
Whereas in wrestling, you don't get away with that.
No.
You got a 360-degree audience in the round, and they will rip you to pieces if they catch you getting air on your punches. Yeah. So Steve is trying not to have too much air between him and the other opponent. The guy's flinching back, so Steve's lunging forward about an inch every time he throws a punch, just to keep that gap relatively close. He's doing this all day, so he gets in that habit. Then they put him in there with me. Well, if you tell me to stand there, I'm going to stand there. I'm going to stay in the pocket. Well, Steve lunged in, and it was just the craziest thing. He came in just a quarter of an inch too much, and his pinky knuckle touched the side of my nose and put it right over here. Like my nose was under my eye. But he went wham, and we both just kind of froze. And I thought,
while your nose is here?
Yeah, it's like I just felt my nose. I didn't know where it was, but I'm like, keep going, because I wanted to save the shot.
Yeah.
So we finished the scene, and then everybody's talking about what they're going to do next. It was like 10 seconds, and my nose is hurting more. Like usually when you get hit, the pain starts going down. It's going up. I'm like, this isn't good. And then I felt it start dripping, and there was just like a faucet of blood gushing out of my nose. So yeah, it was one of the better breaks. I've had it broken 18 times, and that was one of the best ones. So yeah, that's how we started our working relationship.
Shit, okay.
Yeah, he was so apologetic to me, man, but it was totally fine, man. It's one of those things that just happens.
Yeah.
Man. Like no matter how good a simulated combatant you are, sooner or later you're gonna make contact.
You can get caught, yeah.
Yeah, like if Steve can do it, anybody can do it because he's the best.
Yeah. Was that one of your first projects? Like, what was your first stunt?
My first stunt was again Bam Bam. You know, he's. I got to throw a shout out to him too. I met him in Olympic Gym in Vancouver, which is no longer around. He was coordinating a pro wrestling kids show called Los Luchadores, about Mexican pro wrestler superheroes. Cool. And he's not grounded in pro wrestling. He's like karate martial arts guy. So he was asking around the gym, are there any wrestlers here I might use as a consultant? And somebody put us together. So we were talking about that. Then he moved over to a show called Freedom. And he could have just said, okay, well, thanks anyway, but I don't need you.
Yeah.
But he brought me with him, and he put me on the wire team of Freedom. And so I learned how to, like, wire-assisted hand bombs. So that was my first job. And, you know, the whole time he was, like, putting the word in for me and giving me his endorsement to try to get me my first stunt day. So I got my first stunt day on December 20th, 2000. And there was a rather enthusiastic actor I was working with who was training with a UFC champion at the time.
Okay.
And it just the scene went disastrously wrong, man. He was like he was throwing real punches instead of
yeah.
movie punches, and,
Yeah.
and I got the side of my face caved in, like permanent vision damage, and
Oh,
blown
like
up.
he was.
He was throwing as hard as he, and with the choreography of the scene, I was throwing my head this way to be there for him, and so it more than doubled the power of the punch. And yeah, it just like it always makes me laugh, man, because it's like I got my worst punch injury from an actor. Man. I fought Funaki. I was Boss Root and Michael McDonald's sparring partner, and I get my worst punch injury from an actor. But yeah, so that was my first stunt day. It was the first take of my career. I didn't even get all the. It's like action,
First take,
cut, hospital.
Yeah.
That was my career.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so and I was scared, man. I was thought like, okay, I'm going to be the guy who got hurt the first take, and they never want to bring me back. But people were really cool, and so it was like 8 months before I could come back. But there was work for me when I did.
Yeah, I gotta say once again another shout out for James Bamford. He's helped a lot of people. Like I was talking to Marshall, he kind of helped him get into, and he just seems to be one of those guys in the industry who's just willing to help people out.
And at the same time, he's not going to coddle you.
No,
like you got to earn it.
Yeah.
If he endorses you, and I was always very conscious of that. It's like when I go on set, it's like I'm Bam Bam's guy. Yeah. I'm here because he recommended me, and I would not have this job without him. So I can't make him look bad by crap in the bed. No. So I always liked the way he played that, where he's not going to spare your feelings, and if you suck, he's going to tell you.
He tells you, yeah.
And maybe not even that nice.
No, yeah.
But he'll open the door, and if you want to walk through it, then that's cool.
Yeah, it's nice. Like he's one of the guys every time I've had an opportunity to be around on set when he's directing, and I just want to watch how he works. And just the way he commands the room and the way he talks to the talent.
Yep.
It's like he just makes the job a lot easier.
Yeah, he's a natural. I mean, it's so cool to see him like executive producing and directing.
Yeah, like he just does all these things so easy, and then it's like everyone wants to work a bit harder for him. Everyone wants to kind of make the project a bit better, and it's like that's shout out to Bam.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for my career.
Yeah. And so, what you're just mentioning when you were sparring partners. Now, Boss Rutan, who's legend in the game, like of MMA.
And insane.
And insane.
Yeah.
As I've heard of many stories. What were some of the experiences you had sparring with Boss Rutan? And was this with him preparing for a match, I'm assuming?
No, it was actually we met the night that I fought Funaki. It was
that's when you met.
Boss was one of my heroes from the videotapes.
Yeah.
And so it was a surreal moment for me because like I'm sitting in the locker room and there's Guy Mesger who would go on to become UFC champion. And there's Semi Schilt who would go on to become Pancrase champion and K1 kickboxing champion. And I'm fighting on the main event against Funaki. Like, you guys are in the undercard? Like, you guys could all kill me.
Yeah.
And then Boss walks in. I'm like, oh my God, Boss
Rutan.
Right? So, like, we hit it off right away, man. And so, after the fight, we went out on the town in Nagoya. And that was just the start of a friendship that has lasted since 1997.
Cool, man.
Just by pure coincidence, I fought a few times in 97. Then I wasn't going to Japan anymore. And Boss, just by coincidence, he was the guy who was training the dude that messed up my eye. So he got flown into Vancouver to train this guy, which means he's living here. And so he just, by chance, he gets hired by this actor, brought to Vancouver, and put up in a condo a block from my place. So I hadn't seen him since Japan, so it was like we just started up where we left off. And so there wasn't a lot of people to spar with at the time, so he just, anytime he wanted to do some training in, he'd call me up and beat the crap out of me.
But I'm assuming a very fun guy because every time I see interviews,
dude, he's a cartoon character.
Yeah, he seems like a living cartoon character.
That's another guy you should meet if you get a chance to. And he is exactly what you see on TV. He's like, a part of his brain stopped developing when he was around 11 years old, and it's awesome.
That's
like,
sweet.
Such an awesomely juvenile sense of humor.
Cool.
Yeah, he's a giant child in a good way.
Yeah.
And a solid dude too. Like I got nothing but good things to say about Boss.
Yeah. No, he oozes even just any. He's just so uniquely Boss Rutan.
There's only one.
That's the only way.
There's absolutely only one.
Banging it up.
Yep.
Every time he describes doing a hit, I'm like, I fucking love it.
I actually had dinner with him in that place where he shot that.
Oh,
he wasn't even trying to be funny. I've got that entire DVD. I'm showing my age, DVDs, but he put out an instructional self-defense video, and it's about an hour long. And all he did was set up a camera in this. I think it's called Dakota Steakhouse in Simi Valley. I don't think it's around anymore. But he just, the owner likes him, so he let him use the place, set up a camera, and then just started pulling stuff out the top of his head. Like all the stuff you see him doing, he just, oh yeah, let's do this. He didn't have anything laid out.
Oh, so that's how you made the DVD?
Yeah, but the DVD is like an hour long, and that short segment, that like 10 minutes, the dang, 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 that's just some fan cut that together. And even Boss was killing him. He wasn't even trying to be funny, but he watched the video. He was crying. He was laughing so hard. And he's still trying to find out who the original person who cut
he hasn't found out who cut that?
No, because he said that launched his career. Because some producers saw that and thought, that guy's got something. And that started his acting career.
You hear that, YouTube? I don't know who this mysterious YouTuber is that sliced together these clips of Boss Rutan, but there's a possible job waiting for you.
Yeah, now Boss is like, man, he was a series regular on the last, him and Kevin James are really tight, and he's always working on Kevin James projects and movies and stuff like that, and he's got his own thing. Yeah, he's a very, very good actor. He ended up doing, they wrote him into an episode on that show that he was on in Vancouver back in 2000, and everybody was blown away by how well he did.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So, like, do you have any advice for any form of professional, anyone that wants to be a professional athlete in any measure? Do you have any advice dealing with pressure? Because that's kind of one of the things a lot of athletes are. They are more suited to deal with than some other people is pressure. It's always down to the wire, down to the clock, down to the match, down to the minute, second. So, is there any advice you have for people there that are, like, just want to learn how to deal with pressure better? And that's why I like asking professional athletes, because that's what they do.
One thing that was a big thorn in my side, and that's why I didn't win any fights in Japan, is because I would be focusing ahead. Like, okay, 10 minutes from now, this fight's going to be over. Well, yeah, then I'll be a loser at the end of it because I'm thinking ahead. The one thing that really helps you deal with pressure is I guess it's a Zen concept where you live in the individual nanosecond. What's happening right now? What's happening right now? There were times, in fact, there was one, the first time I doubled Steve Austin, I had to do a gag that almost broke my neck. It was air ram, like compressed air catapult. Yeah. Standing on it, getting thrown backward up about 6 feet, back about 10 feet, onto my head on a lawn, no pads, with an exploding car in front of me. And I had to get on and off that thing about 4 times because something went wrong. Like, I'd be ready to go and I'm getting my head together, and it was very timing intensive. Got RB, Chad Bellamy, obviously, Shrek. He was firing the ram, so there's another thing that, his timing's perfect, but we have to be totally in sync. Yeah. So I'm thinking about all the variables and trying not to break my neck on this thing. And 3 times somebody threw a flag, like, wait, and pulled me off again. And after it was over, Chad said, dude, how did you deal with that? And what I did was I thought, okay, now is the time where I'm supposed to be stepping off the lid. Now is the time where I'm supposed to be back on. Now is the time where I'm supposed to get off again. Like, I'm just thinking about what's happening right now and telling myself that's what's supposed to happen right now. And if I got to get on and off the lid 50 times, that's what's supposed to be happening in this moment. As soon as I start thinking ahead or I start thinking back about what the screw-ups that just happened or the screw-ups that might happen, that's when I get taken out of the zone, and you got to be in the zone. So
you're the way you deal with it is where are my feet at this moment is the type of
what's happening right now and what am I supposed to be doing at this moment, and don't think beyond that. And that's how you deal with pressure. It's like because if you think ahead, like in powerlifting contests, they're loading up a barbell for me right now that might crush my spine.
Yeah.
I can't think of that. What am I supposed to be doing? I'm supposed to be sitting in this chair right now and getting my head clear and getting psyched up, listening to my favorite psych up song. Okay, now they're telling me to go. Now it's time to walk there. Now it's time to put the bar on my shoulders. But if you stay like that, you can't psych yourself out because it's just, I don't care about the future. I care about this moment right now and what's supposed to be happening and doing the right thing in this moment. And telling yourself, if things are out of your control, okay, this is what's supposed to be happening. Now how am I going to deal with it?
So you hear that, people? So if you have a hard time dealing with the pressure, and everyone to some level or degree does, is to think of the present moment that you're in, because the anxiety is built out of thinking ahead. Mm-hmm. The angst energy starts accumulating when you're like, 10 minutes from now I'm supposed to be entering the ring for my match.
Yep.
As opposed to be thinking, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm sitting in this chair and breathing. Mm. So take that moment to breathe and be present is what I'm hearing. To deal with pressure, be present. Cool, man.
Yeah, just think about, if you're not, if in this present moment you're not where you want to be or not where you need to be, then you're thinking solutions. Okay, what do I need to do from this moment to the next? What do I need to do now? What do I need to do now? And so on.
Yeah, just for the last little bit of conversation we've been having, one of the biggest lessons I've taken from you was, I love the story of you sending in an application because you want to go do this thing and then forgetting about it and then being thrusted into an adventure, like being taken to a place you've never been, to experience culture that you've never been around, and like, but like that, like that's the other thing I appreciate about the friends I have. It's like Patrick, Mark, like they're like this motherfucker when he was in the Coast Guard. Some of the craziest stories I've ever heard is just coming out of Patrick right here. But it's that taking of it's. The way you were saying is that the only thing we're guaranteed until the very end is experiences, right? That's the only thing we're collecting up until the very last minute before we, you know. So taking advantage of opportunities and being present in pressure. Now, besides those two things we've learned from you, what's another lesson you've learned just from being in the film industry? You know, some of the people you have been allowed to meet, and experiences and the friends you've made. What's one thing this career has kind of taught you?
Not taught me so much, but just I have this idea that I've done a lot of crappy jobs. Like I said, I started things late. You know, I started as a stuntman at 32 years old. That's ridiculously late to be starting as a stuntman. So I've had a lot of labor jobs. I've had a lot of, you know, I flipped burgers. I worked in a convenience store. I did all kinds of different stuff. So I know what hard jobs that don't pay anything are like, and I stay conscious of that. So every time I go on set, I'm 20 years in right now, and still every time I walk on set, I feel like I got to earn my job again today. I got to re-earn my job and stay appreciative. And one thing that it hits me every once in a while is, I guess that kind of affects the way you treat people as well. Like if I see people from other departments or other stunt performers, I'm happy to see almost everybody because, you know, I'm happy I'm here.
Yeah.
And you know, I respect everybody for their particular skill sets, and I'm happy to be doing this job. So, you know, I've had times where I've got 5 hours of prosthetics ahead of me, and I walk in, and one of the makeup girls went, "Oh, this Paul, I got him." Like, she wants me in her chair for 5 hours because she knows I'm not going to complain.
Yeah.
And I like hearing stuff like that. It reminds me that I am staying appreciative, and I always want to do that. I don't ever want to take this job for granted.
Yeah. And it's kind of one of the things I've noticed with the people that either... people that circumvent the best in the industry and like how they carry themselves. And you're definitely one of the people I know that carries themselves as like right off the bat when I met you, I was like, I like this dude.
No, thank you.
I want to talk to him. I want to know his stories. And it's just there's a very open way you carry yourself, you know, like you're like, and especially considering like, you know, like the heavyweight MMA champ, you know, in this Pancrase. But one of the biggest things I could take away from you is you have a very big heart. It's one thing I can definitely, and you kind of, when I see you kind of, just how you carry yourself on set. And so that's one thing I really appreciate about this industry is that I get to be around people that are like highly skilled at what they do, but do carry this gratitude with them. And that's generally the people I'm around because those are the people that last long. You know, those people that make it because if you're going to be 14, 18 hours into a day, you kind of want to be around people that you want to talk to and you want to... And
those are going to be, like, you're drawing extraordinary people to you because it's an extraordinary industry, and then those are the people who are going to want to open up more opportunities to you.
Yeah.
Because they like working with you. Like Don Callis, who's a very heavy hitter in the professional wrestling world. You know, I got to see South Africa just because Don called me up and said, "Dude, you want to go to South Africa?" Yes, I do.
Yeah.
But he called me because he wanted me on that tour. You know, there's a lot of guys he could have called, and he called me. And that was... You know, I didn't expect that out of him, but it was nice. Also nice to have that validation that, okay, well, not everybody in wrestling hates me. Great.
Yeah, and also even being 20 years in, and everyone, like I was mentioning, you were going to be one of the guys I was going to interview, and people were fucking stoked. They're like,
oh, cool.
Great, he's great at conversation. Like everyone was like, cool, Paul, fuck yeah. And so it's like, and for you being in this industry for 20 years, the way you've been, and to be respected the way you are. What are some of the things you could give to future stunt performers? You know, somebody who maybe is like a fucking, you know, like most of us are pretty fucking dumb when we're 18 to 20 something. You know,
I'm pretty dumb now.
Yeah, even now, like I'm 32, turning 33, and I've just barely pulled my head out of my asshole. You know, what's some advice you'd give to a young buck coming in? You know, like some of the things that we've already kind of gone over is, you know, the being present and patient, and what's it called? Showing gratitude every time you show up to work, even 20 years in. What's some advice you'd give to a first-year stunt performer?
Always be looking to improve.
Always be looking
And
to
the
improve.
cool thing is, like as a stunt performer, you never stop improving because there's so many things you got to learn. Like I learned how to ride a motorcycle and a horse strictly because of work.
Yeah.
You know, I probably never would have done either one of those things.
Yeah.
But always be looking to improve and have that end goal in mind, and don't expect everything to be easy and don't expect everything to be fair.
Yeah.
You know, there have been times I've been yelled at by stunt coordinators, and I didn't think it was fair, but I also recognize that coordinator's got a job to do, and they're pressed for time, and they need something done, so shut up,
Yeah.
do what they want, give them what they want.
Yeah.
And if there's a skill set that you can learn, go learn it. You know, expand your horizons, expand your skill set, make yourself as employable as possible. Be professional. Just always be looking to improve, and you'll go a long, especially in the current climate, go a long way in the industry because it's doing so well right now.
Cool, man. So, 20 years in the game, you've held a powerlifting championship or powerlifting record in Canada, and you are what they call them? Sorry, and you're a published author. So you've published 2 volumes, and you're working on your 3rd volume.
Yeah, they're called When We Were Bouncers.
When We Were Bouncers. Yeah. And so the first volume, When We Were Bouncers, this is a collection of stories. Can you tell us a bit more about?
Yeah, I was a bouncer for like 20 years, and I always used to wonder why no project about bouncers did very well.
Yeah.
You know, because bouncers have crazy stories, like
Yeah.
insane stuff happens. And then I realized it's because most people, when they have an interaction with the bouncer, is negative. They don't empathize with the bouncer.
Yeah, they're
they
seeing
don't
it from
connect.
their end.
I don't want to
Yeah.
hear a bouncer story. That guy threw me out.
Yeah.
So then I rolled it around in my head, and I thought, okay, I've been really lucky. I mean, I'm rubbing shoulders with high-level professional wrestlers and UFC fighters and actors and stunt performers. So why don't I get them? Because I know a lot of them used to be bouncers.
Yeah.
So When We Were Bouncers is all stories from famous and established people who used to be bouncers telling their stories from those days.
Fucking cool, man.
So like Theo Rossi from Sons of Anarchy and Luke Cage is in there, and Samoa Joe's in there, Boss Rutan's in there.
Cool.
And yeah, so I'm working on volume 3 right now, but it's I thought there would be no surprises for me being a 20-year bouncer, and there were surprises in almost every chapter.
Amazing. Yeah. And so where can you get this book now? In Amazon?
Amazon, yeah, When We Were Bouncers.
When We Were Bouncers.
Yeah, or you can just have any local bookseller, just tell them you want to order it in.
And so what were some of your favorite stories from the first volume? The first one that really surprised you, especially when you have 20 years in.
You know what is I knew I had a winner of an idea for the book when I got Renzo Gracie, Hoist Gracie's cousin. You know, Renzo's like a world champion in submission grappling and mixed martial arts. He's a legend in the Brazilian jiu-jitsu community. And I said, okay, Renzo called me up. I called him up. He's like, okay, I got 15 minutes. Okay, I said, right, fire away. He goes, okay. When I was 14 years old, I was a bouncer in a whorehouse in the Amazon. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be awesome.
So crazy.
That was the first line of his.
That was the first one.
So that is the first line of the first chapter of the first book, because I got to lead with that. That one blew me away.
14.
14 years old, yeah.
Holy fuck. No wonder he ended up being such a bad motherfucker. And also coming from a family like that.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Yeah, crazy, man. And so now, when did you write When We Were Bouncers?
First one was 2010, I think, and then the second one was 2015.
Cool. How long did it take you to write the first volume? Gather stories?
About a year.
About a year?
On and off. Volume 3 is taking me a long time because I'm just dragging my feet on it. But it's I found the sweet spots between 30 and 35 chapters in that range, so it takes a little while to collect them all.
That's amazing, man. So being an author, some publishing, was this something you've always wanted to do as well?
Yes. When I was 12, I remember idolizing an author named Gordon Corman, who's written like a whole bunch of children's books since in the decades to follow. But just thinking, that's what I want to do. I want to be an author. And I would just want to be able to walk into a bookstore and pull my book off the shelf. And it took me a long time to get around to it, but I finally got that done.
So when are we going to get the Paul, the Mauler, Lazenby memoirs?
I don't know, man. I'm not done doing
Strapping
crazy
up
stuff
the shoes.
yet.
I don't know what the book's going to be called, but...
I have no idea, man, but I'm not done doing crazy stuff yet. So when I decide to settle down finally and grow up a little bit, maybe I'll start writing it.
Cool. And so now I've been hearing the last 6 months, like everyone else, been just training because we have nothing else to do as performers and humans of planet Earth. But I've been looking and seeing a lot about this black oxygen.
Yeah.
So what is black oxygen? I know it's a supplement. That is all I know. But can you please tell us more?
Yeah, I got involved with that with a guy named Pat Miletich, who's a multiple-time UFC champion and UFC Hall of Famer. He's a good friend of mine. And there was a time in the UFC where Pat's team was running roughshod over the UFC. Like Team Militich had most of the belts. Pat had one of them, and like in most of the weight classes, a Militich fighter had the belts. And everybody was wondering, like, why are these guys such animals?
Yeah.
Well, Pat called me up and he said, Paul, back in those days, our secret weapon was a fulvic acid supplement. Fulvic acid's a mineral that comes out of the earth. People take mud baths to get it to leak through their skin.
Okay.
He said, we had a fulvic acid supplement you could take orally. And that's why we were such animals. We could train like crazy and bounce back, and we had such great cardio and everything. It was because of that supplement. He said, Paul, this black oxygen stuff is twice as strong as that. Like, okay, dude, I got to try this. I'm in.
Yeah.
And I took it for like 5 days, and Pat was calling me every day. He's like, you feeling it yet? You feeling it yet? And it turns out I'm a slow responder.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. And he just kept laughing and saying, dude, you will. Day 6, I went in and tore the gym to pieces like I haven't done since I was in my 20s. And I'm like 52 now.
Yeah.
And it was consistent, just kept getting better and better and better. Mood's getting better, cardio getting better, overall health getting better. You know, people are using it for chronic health conditions. Pat's brother has just completely erased cancer out of his bloodstream. And that started happening after he introduced black oxygen into his treatment. It's an absolute crazy, like essential nutritional thing that we're not getting out of our food anymore. It's supposed to be coming out of the soil into our food, and we've overfarmed all the soil. So some crazy French-Canadian genius worked out a way to take it orally, and pretty much everybody I talk to is just raving about it. And I understand why, because I've been on it for like 5 months. You know, and I'm outlifting the powerlifter Paul of the 1990s.
Really?
When I was in my mid-20s, I'm crushing all those numbers now at 52 years old. And that all started when I started taking black oxygen. It's giving your body something that's been craving for a long time, and it's not getting out of food. And your chronic health conditions reverse themselves and stuff. You can't promise anything. You know, legally you can't say this will absolutely do this. But man, the stories I'm getting from fellow stunt performers, from people who are dealing with chronic health conditions, even people giving it to their pets, you know, it's just nuts.
And so it's an essential fulvic acid that's pulled out of, because our soil is just stripped of any sort of minerals from that. So this supplement, it just replenishes your body with...
Yeah, it puts up to 45% more oxygen into your cells at the cellular level, and it cleans your cells out. It pulls nutrients into the cell and pulls toxins out of the cell.
So where can we get more information? Can we follow Instagram?
Yeah, buybblackoxygen.com.
Buy Black Oxygen.
You're not on the hook if you put that in. You don't have to buy right away, but all the information's there. Buybblackoxygen.com.
And so for you, where can we follow you, Paul?
I'm on Twitter at Mauler MMA.
Mauler MMA.
And on Instagram at Famous Bouncers, because that was supposed to be a promo page for when we were bouncers, but it ended up just being my page.
Cool, man. And so we're wrapping up the end of our conversation here. So for Paul the Mauler Lazenby, what are your 3 codes of conduct?
3 codes of conduct?
Yeah, like things that you just carry, the 3 Paul's rules.
I'm going to steal some from my buddy Adam Pearce, who's one of the best pro wrestlers in history.
Cool.
Work hard, be kind, treat people with respect.
Work hard, be kind, treat people with respect. Yeah. You hear that, folks?
That's a modified version of Adam's. I don't want to straight up carbon copy.
Awesome. Paul the Mauler Lazenby, thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
I really appreciate it. And thanks for giving us all this amazing advice. And once again, man, you're an incredible performer, incredible human being. And I can't say enough good things about you, man.
Well, thank you, man. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Peace, man. Buy Black Oxygen. Check it out. So thanks again for listening to Stunt Corner Podcast with Paul the Mauler Lazenby. Please subscribe, leave a comment, hit that like button, and stay tuned for an episode every Wednesday. And Paul the Mauler Lazenby, thanks again for being such a fucking dope fuck. I think we got it.
I'm gonna put that on my resume. Paul Lazenby, fucking dope fuck.
Dope fuck.